Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Welcome back to Magic Hour. I'm your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm your producer, Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Not it being the best month of the year, October, seriously, I wait for it all year, and then it comes, and I'm like, I'm alive. My Scorpio self is just buzzing right now.
It certainly is the witchiest month of all, so I do have a fondness for it. You know me, I love the summer, but I do really like October. There's a lot of fun to be had in October.
It's the start of Scorpio season too. So I truly feel alive right now. Like I wait for it. I just like under a little umbrella in the sun like all year. Then I'm like, yes, let these leaves turn. Let the veil thin. I find it so funny because October, without a shadow of a doubt, is the busiest month for readers. You'll just notice people stream in because they start to think, oh, the veil is thin. I really want a reading. And even before I was on a wait list, like even in the beginning of my journey as a reader, October was popping. It's like something in the air and people are like, wait a minute, I want a reading.
I just feel like the energy in October is so electric. I feel like there's always so many things happening. My October is already booked and busy. There's so much going on, and the veil is thinner. And with the Day of the Dead, and there's so many cultures that connect into this time of the year, and it's a transformation time. And so I just feel like the energy is just always like really buzzing, and you can't help but get swept up in it.
You know what? That's so true. There has never been an October in my life that I just sat around and did nothing. I feel like in the summers, I'm more like, la, Leo season lounging. But like October comes around, and last year, this time, I was in the UK traveling around with my husband. It's like I've never had a idle October. And you know what? That's probably why I love it, because I like to stay busy and witchy.
Yes. I think I told you this last year, but my friend walked into a spider web in October, and he's like a burly guy. And as it happened, he was like, just walked into a spider web. So October. And we just thought it was so funny. And so now I feel like there's so many things that are so October, like the leaves on the ground. And lately the weather in LA has been so October. So it's nice to finally be here and get to enjoy October.
Truly. And the other thing that I want to share before we get into everything is that a listener of the pod, a hummingbird, if you will, which let me back up and explain the lore of that. If you're new to the podcast, the Magic Hour community members are called hummingbirds because in episode 101, Welcome to Magic Hour, the very first symbol that I saw from our angels and guides in the reading was a hummingbird as a symbol for the community and how we're kind of floating from subject to subject, going from beautiful flower to beautiful flower, finding the magic in the world and following our curiosity. And a hummingbird really embodied that. And so that's why I call the community members hummingbirds, which I just think is so cute. And so a community member, a hummingbird, reached out and was like, hey, did you know that a group of hummingbirds is called a charm? And I was like, wait a minute. So I Googled what is a group of hummingbirds called, and it is a charm and a shimmer. And I was like, this is the gift that keeps on giving. I was like, hummingbird is the gift that keeps on giving because, I mean, should I start calling our community? Hello, my charmed ones. What? How do I run with this?
I mean, that is what they are, though. I cannot believe the synchronicity of that. I mean, a charm or a shimmer is literally what magic is about. And what I feel like the goal of Magic Hour is to create more charms in the world, is to remind us of the shimmer that is this magical existence. So I'm just like obsessed with that.
I'm so obsessed. And I've heard that term, like follow your glimmers, where it's the things that light you up, the things that sort of sparkle in your heart space. And now it's like, okay, when you're following your glimmers, then you're shimmering.
Yes. Gosh, yes.
And so the hummingbirds are a group of people who are literally shimmering and who are charmed. So that's pretty cool.
I love that so much. And I feel like I've been seeing more hummingbirds in my life, and They're always such a beautiful gift because they feel like a fairy to me. Like they look like this cute little fairy that's bopping around and just drinking nectar. It seems like a magical life. And I just feel like they're such a gift to us that they showed up in that first episode.
I know there's something about hummingbirds that no matter how old you are, where you come from, what you're doing in the moment, it just takes your breath away when they come
Yes.
because they're so delicate and you're like, oh my gosh, be quiet. It's a hummingbird.
Yeah, be cool.
Be cool, you guys. And so I guess that's us too, just like floating around being magical little fairies in this world that tries to make us forget how magical we are. But it's like, no, mother effer. I'm part of a charm. I'm part of a shimmer. I don't think you heard about us.
Well, and I love too the idea talking about, oh, when I see a hummingbird, it gives me this feeling. And thinking of us as being able to move through the world in that way. If we move through the world trying to remind everyone around us of their magic, then that is like us being this little hummingbird in people's lives, reminding them about, the idea that fairies could exist and that we are fairies. And yeah, adding a little shimmer to everyone's life.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that. That when we're in our magic, when we're embodying our hummingbird energy, it gives somebody else the ability to see what's possible and see magic and see a different way of floating through the world. I love that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's a gift we can give each other on a small scale of like reminding each other of our magic. And it's such a lovely idea.
I love that. Oh, I'm so excited for another listener question slash story episode. I don't know why I had such a hard time saying that. I love these episodes so much. Please continue to send in your questions and your stories to contact@magichourpod.com. We love answering them on the podcast. We love reading them on the podcast. And these are just some of my personal favorite episodes for sure.
Yes, it's so wonderful hearing from you all. And just know if you've sent in a question or a story and we don't get to it on this episode, it's not because we didn't love it. We just have gotten so many amazing ones. So we're just working through them and know that we receive them and love them. And I always forward them to Taylor. And then we have a little exchange about how wonderful they are. So your words and energy mean so much to us. So please keep sharing. And thank you so much to everyone who's reached out.
Yes. And the other thing I want to say is sometimes if you're anything like me, when it comes to me being like, send your listener question or story, you freeze and you're like, oh, I know I have things I want to ask, but I just can't articulate it or I don't know exactly what it is when I'm put on the spot. And so if you were going to DM me a question about it, that is a good example of what to do for a listener question because lately people have been DMing me questions and I'm like, send that as a listener question because I don't have time to give articulate responses in my comments. It would be its own full-time job. So the podcast is a really good avenue for that. And the other thing I just wanted to shout out before we get into it is please continue to share your 5-star reviews. When you screenshot them and email them to contact@magichourpod.com, you get a free downloadable angelic meditation, which is really exciting and beautiful. And it enters you to win an angel reading with me. The second giveaway already happened, but the third is going to happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews on both Spotify and Apple. And Spotify, I'm sorry, Apple, Spotify is rocking you guys. Spotify is like 50 ahead of Apple Podcasts. So I know Apple Podcasts is more difficult because you have to type something out. But if you're on Apple Podcasts, it is a race. And I hope that you will hear this and send in 5-star reviews because it helps the pod grow and also helps you get more in touch with your angels. I really do believe also our past loved ones in spirit are urging us to get into the giveaway pool because the timing with my first giveaway winner was really synchronistic as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what a cool idea that you could get a reading with Taylor. So don't sleep on that.
Woo!
Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to start with a listener story because it's actually a group of stories. So I'm not going to read all of them because it's all about one of our listeners seeing hummingbirds absolutely everywhere.
No
So I'm going to
way.
share. She sent in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 different examples. So I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll read a handful because it's all about hummingbirds. And we were just talking about that.
That's perfect.
So this is a listener story from Meryl. Meryl says, first of all, I want to tell you how much I love and cherish the time I get listening to the Magic Hour podcast. Thank you, Meryl. And I wanted to share some of my hummingbird stories. And she also sent some pics and videos, which only I got to enjoy, but I really enjoyed them, Meryl. So thank you. She says, the first day I ever listened to the Magic Hour podcast, episode 1, before I knew about the hummingbird community, I went out on my deck and a hummingbird flew right up to me and then off into the trees. I started the episode a little later and just smiled. Twice this summer, I asked for a sign from my angels, specifically a hummingbird, and once within 30 seconds, a hummingbird flew straight up out of a tree in my yard and then zipped off. On the morning of the Lionsgate portal, I went outside to have a little moment with spirit since it was such a powerful day, and 2 hummingbirds were going wild in the trees in my backyard, playing and chirping and going crazy. Later that evening, I took a pic of the clouds in the sky, and there was one shaped an awful lot like a little hummingbird. Later in the summer, I attended a summer goddess yoga retreat, and one of the activities was getting an energy offering mediumship reading. I didn't see a hummingbird the entire weekend, except during the reading while she was talking about my grandparents who were coming through. 2 flew up right behind the woman giving me the reading, and they stayed and played for several minutes. 2 deer walked right behind another lady in the group while she was getting a reading too. So cool.
I love that, Meryl. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just have to comment on something. So, something about angels and past loved ones works with and through birds and butterflies and insects like dragonflies and stuff. Something about those types of creatures synthesizes really easily with our loved ones in spirit. And I can't tell you how common those winged animals in particular are as messengers, which is just another layer of the synchronicity of the hummingbirds. Like they are on a consciousness wavelength. I don't know if it's the angel wings and then winged animals, but there's just some sort of connection there. And past loved ones in spirit send hawks, they send cardinals, they send hummingbirds. Like more than any other type of animal, it's birds and winged animals like dragonflies or butterflies. And I remember really early on, my very first mediumship reading, which was actually not even supposed to be a mediumship reading. But in that reading, her dad came through and was like, I sit on her ledge like a hawk. I watch her like a hawk and I sit on her ledge every day. And there was a rare hawk. She was in Australia. There was a rare hawk that there were only a couple left because they were endangered. And one of them would sit on her windowsill from the time her dad passed and just sat there every day for months. And so there is a really beautiful and special connection with birds and angels and past loved ones, or really all winged animals.
There is just something so magical about birds and butterflies. I always feel like there's some sort of connection like that, you know? I saw an owl recently, and the way an owl flies, I mean, it stopped me in my tracks. I was talking to a friend and just immediately had to watch the owl fly by.
I literally get starstruck by owls.
I feel that. I feel that. They're so magical and mystical. And I think because they're creatures of the night, we don't get to see them a lot. So then when you do see one, it feels like this magical moment.
Yes.
Okay, let's get into a listener question. We really have so many good ones. Oh, and this is a great segue from what we were just talking about. This question is from Olia. I hope I'm saying your names right, everyone. I have a question for you. Actually, it came up during that episode about spirit readings for animals. I wondered about trees and plants also having souls. I believe that plants and trees also have some level of soul to them, and I wonder if you have ever felt energies from or been able to communicate spiritually with plants or trees, or if that is something psychic mediums specialize in. Thanks. Love, Olia.
This is such a great question. Thank you so much for it. And 1,000,000%. I mean, there's so much to say, but just like animals have consciousness and awareness and spirit, so do plants and trees. This could be a whole episode in itself. I mean, we talked about plant medicine, I think, in the listener question episode. I can't remember which one it was, but if you go back, it's in the title. But really early on, I just moved into an apartment with Ari, my husband, and he surprised me by building a reading room because I was going back and forth from my house to his. And I was like, I have to go, I have a reading. And finally, he just used his guest bedroom and turned it into an office for me, which was already like, wow, husband, future husband vibes. But in that reading room, he filled it. He's such a Taurus. He filled it with like literally 25 plants. And I was like, okay, when do I tell him that I don't have a green thumb and I can't take all this responsibility? Like, when did I was like, wow. I mean, first of all, it was beautiful and I was so grateful, of course, but I was also really overwhelmed. I was like, I guess I have 25 plants to take care of now. All of that to say, so I did a experiment one time because I get a lot of information through my physical hands. That's why I work with cards because I can feel the energy from them. And so I did this exercise where I was going through all the potted plants and I was putting my hands over them and just seeing what I felt. And one of them just stopped me in its tracks and I felt a sickness in the potted plant. And I was like, huh, that's weird. So I took it outside and I repotted it and I saw there was like this moldy growth at the roots and it had to be repotted. And I was like, whoa, that's really interesting. They can really get your attention and speak to you. If you've listened to the mediumship episodes, you know that spirit speaks through sensory information, which is basically the language of everything that doesn't speak English. And so trees, plants, they can speak to us if we can understand the language of spirit. And I've had so many different experiences. So there was that. There was a time, the last place I ever was with my mom before she passed was the Redwoods in Northern California. And we were hiking in the redwood trees. And I was sitting with this huge ancient redwood and I was meditating with it. And its consciousness was amazing. And it felt so like I was like a little speck of dust to it. It's like you have no idea how long I've been here, how big I am, how much I've seen. It was like very proud energy from this redwood tree. And it was like, sure, you can sit by me if you want. And so it's just so interesting because I have had a lot of experiences with trees, especially. And I think there is something so special about trees. And I've had a number of angel messages about sitting with the energy of trees, letting trees ground you. I remember in my old apartment, there was like a little palm tree in the front. And I remember feeling like it was so unhappy in the cement that it was planted in. And so I really believe that. So that's one part of trees having consciousness, plants having consciousness. But just like we have animal guides, let's say, for example, a deer shows up and then that has its own medicine and message for you. We have plant guides as well. And some of the most common ones that show up in my reading are roses, sunflowers, mushrooms. I'm trying to think now, it's evading me, but those are the big three, and they all have different messages. Like, for example, sunflowers, they're so resilient, they're so bright, and they always grow to the sun. Like, no matter where they are planted, no matter what circumstances, they will always move towards the light. And there's their own message and magic and medicine in that when they show up for someone. And rose is all about coming into bloom and divine feminine energy. And sometimes it's tied to late bloomer energy. And so there's always different messages that come from the plant guides when they come. And there's people who specialize in this, like different people that work with earth magic and shamanism. I'm not super well versed in shamanism, but I think there's a lot of connection with the land in different, for sure, in different indigenous cultures. And I mean, with all of the indigenous cultures in plant medicine, they like speak to the spirit of the plants. They have relationships. They know exactly what medicine the spirit of the plants are for. And they do what's called a dieta, which I learned from Tori of episode 118. We were talking about how you go on these like diets of different plants. And then there's these sacred containers that open within that. And you have different downloads. I'm not super well versed in it, but there's a whole, I mean, if you realize how much magic exists, like I'm looking in front of me right now and there's just a million oak trees right in front of me, like that itself is enough magic to talk with, interact with, communicate with, be healed from. That's all you need is like a slice of nature. It has its completely own consciousness and frequency.
Yes, it's so funny. I feel like we have this weird idea that we are separate from plants, like we're not made of the exact same stuff, and that our consciousness isn't the same consciousness that fuels and drives the flowering rose, as we are also our own flowering creation. And I mean, for me, the greatest medicine is getting into nature, going to the beach. The other day, I went to the beach and swam in the ocean. And I have never had an experience swimming in the ocean that didn't completely change me. Like, my energy is just so different. It is so profound to connect in, to have your feet in the sand and feel the water, see the vastness of the ocean, walking in a forest. Like, we are not separate from the natural world. We are the natural world. And we've built little boxes to make us feel like we exist in a different world. But the more we can recognize that we vibrate on the same vibration as every creature and every living thing, the more we can tap into that energy and utilize the natural world in a healing, connective way.
Absolutely. And it sounds so cliche, but it's like disconnect to connect. And that's what I kept feeling when I was in the redwood trees. Like, oh my gosh, it feels like a reset button on the ego going into nature. It's like we get so connected to our screens, our technology, our job, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. And there's nothing closer to who we really are than just being in nature. It's like that reset button, like I said, and it shakes everything up. It cleanses us. If anything, plants can guide us, not just plants, but the ocean, rivers, mountains, everything has a consciousness. And when we interact with it, it can bring us back to remembering who we really are. And nature is not only a teacher, because it is a teacher, and every single thing about how it works has a lesson, but it's also a mirror. And when we go into nature and we don't have the distractions of everything man made, it just brings us back to really looking at the parts of ourselves that are everlasting.
Yeah, it brings us back to our unique self, our true self, I think, which is a piece of this like tapestry that is life. And it is such a gift and it's all around us. And all we have to do is shift our attention to it and connect to it.
Yeah, it reminds me of these memes that I've been seeing of like these breathtaking vistas. And then the text is like, but we thought we needed to invent Microsoft Excel, like things like that.
Yes.
But I'll see you on Google Meets. Like,
Yes. I know I saw one that was like, we could have just been hanging out by rivers and eating grapes, but instead we're doing taxes and created this whole complicated world that we then need to take a break from so that we can go sit by rivers and eat grapes.
I'm a hair away from just like joining a commune.
I talk about doing that all the time. I mean, I think too, it's hard because this isn't a possibility in our world right now, or it is a difficult thing to try and create. But the idea of being in these like smaller tribal communities where we are one with the earth and work together as a community has just been ringing so much truer and truer to me. And, you know, I don't know if that's possible in this day and age, but can we find ways to create that in our life even a little bit?
Like, even if you're a small business owner, like trading services with somebody, or I don't know.
Coming together for communal meals with your friends, you know, like you bringing food for the group one time and them bringing food for the other. Like there are ways for us to feel more like a community with ourselves and the earth, and I think tapping into that is really powerful.
I so agree. And this is the last thing I'll say because I don't want to go on too long of a tangent. But I saw this video of this lady who was like cooking food. And she said, I realized I am the village. And she would drop it off to the single mom who just had a baby that lived in her like apartment complex. And it's so true. We are the village. Like, if you don't care about your neighbors, who else will?
Yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about, how we can shimmer to the people directly around us and make such a
Yeah.
big impact. Okay, let's go to a story. This story is from Ketrin. Again, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Hello, Taylor. I'm reaching out because I have accidentally stumbled onto your podcast and have been blown away by all the lessons and healing it has brought me already. So many tears have been shed and so much knowledge gained. My first ever episode was an episode in which you brought in the message of having a bunny as the symbol for a baby boy who passed away and is in spirit. I had a miscarriage earlier this year and got so much strength out of this episode, as even though we only knew about him for 4 days, he was so immensely loved already. It brought me to tears while I painted a mural, and it was so healing. Even the reasons, lots of moving, etc., you mentioned in there, it's like you described our situation. It was no accident this podcast started randomly. Now the latest episode hit home for me again. Ever since I've been struggling as I wondered if I should have another baby, and I'm really happy I've listened to this episode to give me strength and hope for the future. Thank you so much from Katrin in Australia currently. I'm visiting my home in Germany. So thank you for bringing your messages out there. With my full heart, thank you, Katrin.
Oh my goodness, Katrine or Katrin, I'm so sorry if we're not saying
So
your name
sorry.
right. This message is so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love the way that angels and guides work through technology. Like, it's no accident if you found this podcast, quote unquote, randomly. It was not random. So I just love that story. And I do the sitting with spirits for obviously so many listeners. So to get these messages back when it's like, no, that was definitely for me, means a lot. And I'm just wishing you and your family the best and sending a lot of love right back.
Yes, I know a miscarriage can be such a difficult experience, and I don't think we talk about that enough. I think we act like it's maybe no big deal or something that just happens, but holding space for the love that you had for that little soul and knowing that they're still here with you in spirit is such a gift.
Absolutely. And she's talking for anybody listening about episode, I believe, 113 with Emily, the spirit baby medium. And if you have had a miscarriage or are going through fertility challenges, that's a really good episode to tune into because we dive into a lot of those topics.
Yes. Okay, another question. This question is from Stephanie. Hi, Taylor and Claire. I have a question on your perspective of what it means when the universe throws roadblock/friction your way on a path that you're trying to go down. Do you interpret this as a sign that you're not encouraged to go down that path, or do you see it as tests to work through? I have two different examples to give. About a year ago, I met someone through a dating app that I felt excited about. We lived a couple of hours apart and kept trying to meet in person, but events kept getting in the way. A snowstorm, a delayed flight, and then most strangely, on a weekend that we were going to meet, first my check engine light went on, and then the next day his car battery died. I ended up interpreting this all as the relationship wasn't worth trying to pursue given the repeated roadblocks combined with long distance. Also, I was trying to complete some tests as a part of fertility treatments. I've done this in the past and everything went smooth then. But this time, it's been one delay after the other. First, the lab order I was provided was missing some tests. Then at the lab, they failed to run some tests. And then finally, one of the results came back inconclusive, which meant to do the test again. This leaves me to wonder, is now not the time to be doing these items related to fertility? Thanks for your thoughts, Stephanie.
Ooh, this is a really interesting question. Thank you for this, Stephanie. So, first of all, there is no one answer for this because as humans on Earth, life is clunky and dense, and sometimes it does take pushing for the things that we want. So, don't become too superstitious with this. If you feel like, oh, does my phone dying and me not seeing this call from this guy mean that my angels don't want me to call him back? Like, it's really easy with this work to get superstitious and get really in our head and overanalyze everything. And so the main message I want to say is drop into the truth of your heart. When everything on the outside feels really clunky, it's easy for the mind to come in and analyze that. But that the mind analyzing is never the way to get the message. The truth in our heart is the way to get the message. So I'm not going to come on here and be like, yes, angels and guides send delays when you're not meant to do something because it's not as clear cut. I have to be in a one-on-one reading with you to really tune in to see what's going on. But what I can say for the collective is that you're in a moment where you want something so badly, or maybe not even that badly. You just think you want something and you're experiencing a bunch of tests and lessons and delays and clunkiness. There's a few things I want to say. One is that rejection is protection, and there might be something that you're not seeing yet. Like, I've definitely had clients where they're like, I want to take this next level step with my partner, or we want to buy a house, or we want to have a baby. And the message is that's not coming through yet because until you fix this communication issue or have this talk or this talk about money, like these things, then it's not for your highest good actually to get that thing because you're not in the energetic place to support it yet. And it will end up being harder on you. So there can be an element of that. And I've seen that a lot in my readings where the tests and the lessons are not a no, they're a not yet because you haven't gotten the full lesson yet or broken the pattern or become the foundation that you needed to have so that you can sustain that thing. So that's definitely a part of it. The other thing is if a lot of things are happening and they're blocking you from something and you tune into your heart space, it's also giving you the opportunity to really connect with, do I actually really want this thing? Because it's easy to go for something when it's easy and in flow, but that doesn't mean that you want it anymore. It just means that it's easy and in flow. But do you still want that thing when it's hard? And I think that's why you keep checking in with yourself over and over again with radical honesty. Like, okay, am I pursuing this thing from a place of love or obligation or fear of what will happen if I don't pursue this thing? Am I pursuing this thing because I'm genuinely lit up by the idea of it? And it's just to run it through the barometer of your own heart space. And if that answer is no, I really do want this and it lights me up and I'm in my joy, then keep moving forward. Don't let the superstition of this block you from that. Claire, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, for sure. I really wanted to read this question because I relate so deeply to this. And it's been something that's been on my mind and my heart because I'm an actress. And so, for anyone who is also a creative or in the entertainment industry, I'm sure you can relate to that it is a very challenging road and there are many roadblocks. And lately, I've been having those kind of doubtful thoughts of, this is so hard. And I've been at it for a long time. And I feel like I still keep getting a lot of no's. And does that mean that I'm not on the right path? Are those no's here for a reason to wake me up to the fact that, like, this isn't for me? And, it's a complicated thing to think about. And you may see other people who are getting a yes, and it can feel like, okay, is this not for me then? And so I just really loved your answer about connecting into your heart space because for me on this journey with it, again and again, I have bumped up against this feeling of, oh, this is frustrating. And is this worth it? Is it for me? And when I connect into the reasons why I do it, which is that I absolutely love doing it. And when I'm doing it, I feel so lit up and I feel like I'm good at it. It feels like my purpose. And so, even though there has been a lot of roadblocks and a lot of no's, in my heart, this is a full body yes. And so, I'm going to continue to try and hope that this feels like it's for me because it is for me. Even if right now it feels like I'm on a mountain that I can never get to the top of.
What you love to do is not an accident. What you love to do is not an accident. And I'm so glad you shared your perspective because there's so much I want to say about it. And I have so many clients who are in industries that are not really in their control, where they're waiting for a yes. And the first thing I want to say about that is sometimes we get it in our head like, oh, I can only do this path this one way. And sometimes the lesson, if things are like roadblock after roadblock, is it's time for a new approach. It's time to shine your creative light in a new way or take things into your control or make your own projects or things like that. If it might just be a redirection with the current strategy. The second thing is a message that I get all the time in readings. I mean, I literally just read for an actress today who had this exact same experience, like literally mere hours before this recording. So it's so common. And the other message that I get is that sometimes we come into this world and we pick a path that lights us up so much that there's no chance we'll leave it. And so, what I see is that the entertainment industry in particular is so many people's dreams are so lit up, and it's the perfect vehicle for them to learn their lessons, to grow, to find their voice, to learn resilience, to trust themselves. And it's almost like how we incarnate into a family to learn those lessons. Sometimes we incarnate into a soul path that they know we won't veer from because the love is that great to stay on it, which will keep us locked into the path of such fast paced transformation, evolution, and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I mean, I think that's a challenging thing to hear, but also a beautiful thing to hear, that part of the journey of this is to step more fully into my power, and
Yeah.
that the trials and tribulations of it, the roadblocks, are tools and lessons and help along that.
Yeah, and nobody's absolved of tests and lessons and personal powers. For some people, it's their family. For some people, it's their career passion. For some people, it's their fertility. For some people, it's everything. But I think for people that are so passionate about their careers, especially the acting industry is so intense when it comes to you being the product and Hollywood and all of these things. I mean, there's no way to not go through it. And I think that's why so many actors are so spiritual. I think so many actors go through big spiritual awakenings and growth. And I think actors are channelers in their own way when they get into character. And, I was an actor myself, which is how we met. But the difference between you and I is that I sucked.
That is not true. That is a lie.
Well, the difference between you and I is that basically when I was 7, I decided I'm going to be an actor. And that was what I stuck with my entire life without ever questioning it. And I was in my 20s. I was getting rejection after rejection. I was trying so hard to make this work. And I just sat there and I realized I'm not staying in this because I actually love it. I'm staying in it because I just got new headshots and what would people say if I quit? And I already put this much time into it. And I realized I'm staying loyal to an outdated story. And as soon as I realized that, I went into comedy writing and then I went into becoming an angelic intuitive, which was completely a left turn that I never saw happening. But everything along the path prepared me for this moment now. I truly believe that. So no experience is wasted. But the most common thing I see for people in industries or things that they feel like they have no control is stop trying to go at it just this one way because you're getting the message that this one way isn't working. So just shake it up and find other avenues to be in your creative flow. And that at least empowers you so that you're not just waiting at the mercy of an industry. You're doing your own things and passion projects and things that light you up, whether they have to do with acting or not.
Yes. And another thing I'll offer up too, and it kind of goes back to the miracle journal idea of like, I think, especially in this industry, but I'm sure in many other endeavors, it is so easy to focus on what isn't working. And so it's easy for me to tally all the no's and all the times that I didn't get the part and I didn't get the call back or the agent said no. And so easy to sweep under the rug all the yeses. I mean, I have a film that's on demand right now that I'm starring in, but because I don't have an audition today, everyone's telling me no. So I think that's a really good perspective shift too. And if it even means like tallying those things, like writing down the yeses and letting yourself focus on all the ways it is working out, all the times that someone made you feel like, no, this is your purpose. You are so right for this. Keep going. And not letting the story of how you think it should look, how successful you should be, get in the way. Because I think success can mean so many things. Like, success can also mean enjoying your day. If
Mm-hmm.
that's not success in this life, I think we want success so that we can enjoy our life. And I think we can reverse that and choose to enjoy our life now as we pursue the things that light us up and call that success.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You talking about remembering all the yeses is like a career version of a miracle journal where it's like Where did you get affirmation on your path? Where did you have a breakthrough? Where did you do something that felt really lit up? And it's true because we're in a society that's centered on lack and comparison and all of these things. And so we have to actively feed the part of our brain that recognizes the triumphs and the successes. And I so agree, like the journey is the point. And so to zoom back out to Stephanie's question, just really ask yourself, even in that example with that guy you were interested in dating, if all of those things getting in the way could get you to a place where you're like, you know what, I'm kind of over it, then that person is not for you because you really can't miss what is meant for you. I truly believe that. And the universe and our angels will continually course correct us until we get to what is meant for us and what our heart is asking for. And so I think at the end of the day, the most simple way to answer this question, if you're not getting a reading or going into the energetics, is simply just what is the truth of your heart? Is it for you? Is it a full body yes? Is it something you're talking yourself into? And maybe these delays and restrictions are just pause buttons for you to analyze and make a new, healthier choice.
Yeah, it's a friction to ask the question, even. It's something to bump up against to then connect deeper into, do I want this? And maybe you do. And that friction was a way for you to be like, I do. And now I can double down on it. And I can go for it even more fully because I was asked to assess whether I want it.
Yes, it's like sometimes when you're in a relationship and you get in your first fight and you're like, oh my gosh, I never realized how much I actually care about this person until there's a chance that it's not going well or I might lose it or this or that. And so sometimes these tests and lessons and delays have the opposite effect where it's never been more clear to me how much I want this. And so I think, again, there's no one size fits all. Radical honesty is the only way forward.
Yes.
But don't let superstition come into it because that's never the answer.
Yeah, because I do feel like there's a way where we can take signs and apply what our mind thinks to those signs. And that can be a little bit of a dangerous game of like signs and synchronicities can mean a lot of things. And so I think we can have a light touch with them as well and not let them be like, oh, I saw this number when I had that exact thought of doubt. So that means XYZ. It's like truly the greatest sign is the call of our heart. And so tapping into that and really feeling into, do I love this? Or am I lit up about this person? Okay, I think I am. So I'm going to continue to go for it despite the roadblocks.
Yeah. And maybe the roadblocks just mean that you're maybe moving forward in a way that could be more powerful, detached from outcomes, lit up. And that's another thing I see with people in professional creative spaces too. The message I get all the time is you've fallen out of love with why you originally chose this path. Like you chose this path to create, to play, to share your voice, whatever it is. And it's become all about what the ego deems as success. And that's the foundation. That joy is the foundation that propels you on the path. And all the roadblocks might be asking you to reconnect with that. I mean, there's so many things that it could be, but to the point that you just said about us attaching meanings to signs, it reminds me of the Philippa Gregory series that I'm reading right now. She wrote like the White Queen, the Red Queen, the Constant Princess. Right now, I'm listening to the Constant Princess book on tape, and it's basically King Henry VIII's wife, Catherine of Aragon's point of view about their marriage and all of these things. And it's so funny because humans never change. And that's what historical fiction always reminds me is that we are not changed at all. And that's what was so interesting about being a theater major and reading like ancient Greek dramas and comedies and stuff. Like we truly are humans. And when it comes to projecting what we want to be true on the signs from the universe, this series is so full of that. Like, this happened, which means God wants me to invade France. This happened, which means God actually wants my son on the throne. It's like they are just taking signs and just putting words in God or goddess's mouth for exactly what they want to be true. And I truly think that is a human impulse as old as time, is basically excusing what we want and superimposing God's will on it and just taking the signs for that.
Yes, and our fears as well, right? It's like I'm afraid that this career isn't for me because I want it so badly. So when I get a no, my fear tells me, "Oh my God, is that a sign that this isn't for you?" So
Yeah.
even in terms of our desires and our fears, it's like we really have to take a step back, I think, with the signs and make sure we're not imposing those things upon them and maybe let them show us instead of deciding what they are.
I would use signs as an invitation for connection instead of a message. So I would see the signs as okay, a reflection point of what did my mind try to fill the blank in with this sign, because that's a great starting point for what your subconscious is doing in the background. And the second thing is those invitations for connection is when we see the signs, it's like our angels are getting our attention through synchronicities. It's not the message itself, it's an invitation to get the message. And I think that missing step is one of the top mistakes I see people make on their intuitive development journey.
That's so true and so profound. This question was so amazing and is a great example of why sending in your questions are so powerful because this was a question I wanted to talk about and hear about. So just
Mm,
know that so many people probably will resonate with your questions. And by you sending them in and us getting to address them on the podcast, so many more people can have insights than just you. So thank you for sending this in, Stephanie.
absolutely. And if you're looking for angelic connection and intuitive development, I highly recommend my Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive Workshop. It's on angelsandamethyst.com. Code 333 gives you $33 off. And it's all about working with oracle cards, working with your angels, developing your clairs, creating safe, sacred space. It's a really great place to start if you don't know where to start. And angels are all love. And it truly is just here as a resource for you. It's a 3-part go at your own pace workshop. And it's truly here for you so that when you get those signs and you're like, what does it mean? Does it mean he's my soulmate? Does it mean this? Does it mean that? You can know how to create the sacred space and get more clear answers for yourself.
Mm, I love that. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was
Yeah.
so helpful.
So relatable.
So relatable. And at the end, we really got to such a clear thing about how to interpret our signs from our angels. And I think no matter what, it's all about resonance, like you talk about, using the signs to connect deeper, not as an answer, like you said.
What I want to comment on that is that I've been getting a message lately. So, of course, this came up, and not our angels working through you and me, just like in synchronicity. But I've been getting this message about resonance with a capital R and resonance with a lowercase r. And resonance with a capital R resonates with the part of us that remembers who we truly are. That is spirit, that is oneness, that is our higher self, and is pure love. And resonance with a lowercase r resonates with our worst fears, resonates with where we've been wounded, resonates with the inner villain voice, really. And so there's two types of resonance. And I felt like it was important to distinguish this because I always say resonance is so important. But sometimes, and what I'm talking about there is resonance with the uppercase R. Resonance with the lowercase r is when we do things or see things or resonate with behavior, relationships, jobs that are not for our higher selves, but it resonates with the part of us that believes I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'll never be loved. And it resonates with the part of us that isn't healed. And when we do our healing work, we fill up the cup of resonance with the uppercase R and we attract more to us things that are in resonance with our higher self and less things that are in resonance with our wound. And when we co-create with things that we know aren't for our, like that little tiny whisper voice is the uppercase resonance with its cup drained. It turns into a whisper because we're filling up the cup of I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm in shadow, etc., etc. And that's a place that it's so much harder to remember who you really are from. And that's where things like self sabotage, escapism, abusive behavior from other people, that resonates with the part of you that allows it to happen because it's unhealed.
Yes. Wow. I'm glad that came up as well. I feel like that's so true. Sometimes when we like get into partnership with people, it's like we're drawn to someone that fulfills our fears. And that's a resonance, but it's like a resonance coming out of my fear of, oh, this person will mistreat me the way I'm used to being mistreated, or this person
Yeah.
will validate that I feel like I'm not enough and they will agree with that.
Yeah.
And deciphering between the two is probably going to be a lifelong practice for all of us. But I would imagine the more we can fill our cup, like you said, with the capital R, the more we can recognize the difference between the two and therefore make a more healed choice to resonate with the things that are actually in our resonance and not with our fears.
And in those micro moments where we have a choice, really ask yourself, am I going in resonance with uppercase or lowercase r with this? Does it really resonate with me to text this person after they've ghosted me? Or is it resonating with the part of me that's so scared of what will happen if I don't? And so, in those micro moments, run it through that barometer. And I'm not saying the spiritual bypass and just be like, my higher self doesn't resonate with this if you don't really feel that, but use it as an opportunity to just see what's in the driver's seat of resonance. Is it your higher self or is it your inner villain? Because they're always fighting for dominance. Well, your higher self isn't fighting, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and your unhealed shadow self is loud. Mine is very loud and very convincing. And so I
Mhm.
think that's such a challenge that the whisper isn't shouting, but how can we tune more into that whisper and feel into that feeling? Because I think we can tell when it feels right and when it feels angry and sad and fearful.
Absolutely. And our inner villain voice is the most convincing voice in the world because it's perfectly tailored to our past experiences. It is us. It knows exactly what we're scared of. It knows exactly what we've been through. It knows exactly what we don't want to hear. And it resonates and draws in exactly what will confirm those things. And so it's so important to break out of that cycle. And when you start to choose better and heal and do better, you can realize, wow, I'm in resonance with my higher self. And once you wake up to that, you can never go back to sleep.
Yes, I love that so, so much. Ah, Stephanie, thank you. What a conversation. I think we have time for maybe one more story and one more question. So let's see. Oh, this is a lovely listener story from Jade. Hi, Taylor and Claire. I've been listening to all your podcasts and every week hoping there would be a message for me during Sitting with Spirit. Part 3 of the Hogwarts Journey podcast I felt was for me. Since I learned from you to ask for more evidence, I grabbed my angel cards and asked, show me the 1, you are safe card, and 2, hello from heaven card. After shuffling my deck really well, both of these cards came out, making it clear that your message was for me. You can't make this stuff up. Thank you so much. With love, Jade.
I love that, Jade. Thank you for sharing. And that's a perfect example of things that we don't think to ask. Ask for something that specific, and it will blow your mind the way you're supported.
Nothing has been more mind blowing than when I need a specific message and the card that I pull is just like word for word what I'm going through, or the card that I've had in my mind that I'm like, if I was my angels, I'd send me this card. And then you pull that card. It's just such a wonderful confirming moment where you just feel like, wow, I'm supported.
Yeah, it's so true.
Okay, one more question. This one's a little bit long, but it's really cool. This question is from Evalata. I really hope I'm saying that right. Hi there from Sweden. Leo sun, Pisces moon, and Libra rising here. I'm a Pisces moon. First off, love your podcast and what you do in general. You give so much wisdom and new perspectives that soothes, inspires, and awakens curiosity. Short question with some background info. I wouldn't consider myself psychic in any way, but a year ago, I did a past life regression meditation on YouTube by myself, just out of curiosity with no expectations. While meditating, I found myself in the body of a middle-aged woman. I could tell by the old-fashioned dress and my hands. In front of me was a big yard with a low stone wall and vast fields behind it. The house was an older-looking white stone house. When the voice in the recording asked me about who I was, time, and place, the answers popped in my head really fast. Elsie, Scotland, 1914. Afterwards, I smiled to myself and thought, wow, what an imagination. Didn't know much about Scotland, for instance. A few hours later, I figured I'd Google it, but didn't think I would find anything. But when I did, a picture of a woman by the name Elsie Inglis, 1864 to 1917, showed up. a well-known Scottish medical doctor, surgeon, teacher, suffragist, and founder of the Scottish Women's Hospitals. Chills all over my body. I can't tell her whole story here, but one of the biggest events in her life happened in 1914. I recently came home from a trip to Edinburgh, Scotland, where I visited the address in the middle of the city where she lived and had her practice. Again, chills everywhere. I wondered about the rural house I saw in meditation, though, but I found something about Elsie being a visitor at a friend's house in a village from 1911. Do you think that Elsie can be a past life of my soul, or is this a coincidence? Because I didn't get that much info, and I'm really scared of blood.
Oh my gosh, I love this story so much. Thank you for sending it in. So, first of all, of course you're psychic. You're like, I don't consider myself psychic. And then you're like, and then I saw a vision, and then I had a knowing, and then I got this evidence. So, I think every single person has the ability to develop their psychic skills and to tap in. So, let's start there with this is an extremely psychic phenomenon that you had. So, from my understanding, and I believe it's episode 126 with Nadia Gledhill, where we go into everything past life. But from my understanding, past lives, current lives, and future lives are all happening simultaneously. And the way that I understand it from my angels and guides is that our physical bodies are almost like bookmarks for our consciousness. So, being in a body puts us on one timeline of awareness, but then when we're back to spirit, everything is oneness again. So, just being in our physical body gives us the ability to experience linear time, but linear time is a human concept because we can't conceive of what the quantum nature really is. I hope that I explained that okay. So, just because you were a doctor in a past life, but you don't like blood in this life, that's okay because you're in a different quote unquote character in this life. Like you're in a different slice of consciousness and it's not authentic to you to be a doctor because you don't like blood. But in every single life, we're here to wholly, powerfully, and authentically explore the slice of consciousness that we've embodied. That's literally the point of life. And so when people ask about their life purpose, I'm like, are you in your full authentic joy? Because that's literally what we came here to do, and full authentic power. So that's the first thing. Secondly, is that I don't believe in accidents. And I think since Scotland isn't a place that you've been a million times, which by the way, I love Scotland. If you haven't been there a million times and you don't really have a lot in your memory bank about it, but you see a flash of you in a house and you saw your hands, which is also interesting to me because you had her perspective. You weren't looking at her, you were her looking at your hands. And oftentimes in dreams that are past life memories, it's in the first person. Like when I had that reoccurring dream of being a little boy in the Holocaust, I always saw from out of my own eyes. I never was in third person looking down at myself. And I was always like trying to dig a little hole, like scrape a little hole with a nail. And I saw my hands too. So I think that's really interesting, the whole first person thing. And I think it's really cool that you found the evidence and the synchronicity with the year 1914. I think that's amazing. And yeah, I think that there's no such thing as accidents. I will say past lifetimes are a medicine that not everybody needs to take because sometimes we can have had really traumatic things happen to us in past lifetimes. So I will caution people from lightly exploring this because I've had experiences. I won't go too deeply into it, but I had an experience where I asked my angels, please show me why I can't let go of this person that I was dating and I'm having a hard time. And they were like, do you really want to know? And I was like, yeah, I really want to know. And I basically got taken to a past life in Egypt where I was in this hut and I just had these two, trigger warning, but these two babies that didn't make it in their cradle. And I was sobbing hysterically and being held by my husband. And I had just lost these two twins. And everything was made out of mud and clay. And it was only lit by these torches. And it was like a really vivid vision. And it took me a long time when I came out of it to be like, my name is Taylor. I don't have kids. I didn't lose babies. And it was so traumatic for me to see that. And it took a long time, but it also answered the question because the person that I was dating at the time was the husband in that life. And when he and I were hanging out, I felt the two spirit babies that had passed in that life around us. And I misinterpreted it as, are these our future kids? And I started getting really in my head. And this was around the early times of my development. And I was like, how can I be reading for other people if I clearly felt two kids around us, but now we're broken up? And so that's why they sent me into that vision to be like, no, there were two kids. You misinterpreted it as your future kids when really they were your past kids. And so to clarify, past, present, future is through my perception in this body. So that's a delineation there. It's like past, present, future is all one. But again, my body is a bookmark in consciousness. So for in the chapter I'm in right now, that would be past for my perception. But really, it's all at once. And that's where I think deja vu comes from and a bunch of other things. That being said, that was a really gnarly experience of past lifetimes. I had to have it though, because it showed me that I was accurate and that I could do this work. And my angels and guides didn't want me to get discouraged because I was like, if I'm wrong about this, I'm in no place to help guide other people. But it turned out I just, again, attached meaning to something that I wanted to be true without having the development to fully understand that nuance at that time. So that just shows for people out there, like past lifetimes, just if you're going to explore it, set the intention with your angels and guides that it's exactly what you need to see here and now, and trust your resonance. Does it resonate with you to explore past lifetimes? Do you feel like you have something unexplainable that you want to go deeper into? Is there something you're curious about, or does it not really resonate? It's like a little scary and you don't really want to do it. So just pay attention to however you feel about it, because it is powerful and I do fully believe in it. And I think that it's so cool that you had that experience.
I think it's just so magical that you went on this like pilgrimage to connect with this energy and vision. And yeah, I think to me, it sounds like doing that was a way for your angels and guides to show you that you are tapped in and that you do have psychic connection, and maybe a little gift from your past self to show you a window into her world and let you know, like, look how connected you are. We were able to connect over whatever barrier there is. Like, we were able to connect in this wild way. So you have the power to connect and trust yourself.
Yeah. And one of the messages that I got one time, it was for a client in an angel reading, and she was being really hard on herself. And her angels basically said, if you knew how many lifetimes that you were living right now, doing your best, you would be a lot easier on yourself. If you saw who you were right now on every different timeline and dimension, you would put a lot less pressure on yourself to get it all right in this lifetime.
That is such a beautiful reminder to all of us to be a little bit gentler with ourselves. I think we can all be so hard on ourselves in moments because, we're the ones accountable for ourselves. And so if we want to do a good job and show up well for people, we're the only ones that can hold us accountable. But I think sometimes that can get really muddy and it can be a way to be down on ourselves. And I always say to friends when they're going through that, if your intentions are to show up and try with an open, loving heart, that's enough, no matter how it ends up going. That your intention is the work, is the gift.
Absolutely. And showing up with an open heart after betrayal and heartbreak is the most powerful thing you can do. And I don't want to get too into this, but I will just say the only person that gets hurt from having a closed heart is you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it is the higher choice for yourself ultimately to be open hearted after heartbreak.
Yes, that's such a good reminder.
I know. We'll have to do a love life episode. We really will, because there's so much to
Yes.
say. We'll get into that eventually. Who knows? But I loved this episode so much, and I loved these questions and stories. And I loved this last one because it was like a combo of a question and a story. So fun.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It was such a magical story. And I just love imagining you in Scotland connecting with this other version of yourself.
I agree. Scotland is so magical. Ari and I were there last year actually probably on this day that we're recording this. And we went all around the Scottish Highlands, and it was so amazing because there were rainbows everywhere in the Highlands. And I really felt like my mom was there. And we were in Edinburgh and we saw the castle there. And it was like the energy there was just impeccable.
Mm.
Truly an amazing place.
And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with trees and plants. It's like I really believe that certain places on the earth hold this like extra magical power, and feels like Scotland is one of those places for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a vortex.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's funny to think of like the trees having Scottish accents.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And it's true. Every single place has a different vibration of magic, and that's part of the magic of traveling.
Yes, I agree. And such a gift to be able to travel. The more you can do that, I think the more depth we can have in this experience.
Yeah, and I think if you have a situation where you feel a calling to a specific location or you feel like you had a past life somewhere, I love going to visit there and just put your bare feet in the earth there and just let the energy be soaked up through you. Meditate there, open your own portal of connection there because you never know what kind of magic will happen if you do that.
Yes, I love that so much.
Well, shall we transition to sitting with spirit?
Let's do it.
Welcome to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where, as always, I sit with our angels and guides and I give the messages for the collective. Please take what resonates with you and leave the rest. The first thing that I want to share today is a message about getting readings from people because it's October. This is the time of year where people are like, oh, wait, I kind of want to get a reading and it's a witchy season and all of this. I'm not going to get too into the details, but recently I had somebody give me a message that was predictive, that was not constructive or positive. And it was a really interesting experience because it gave me the ability to empathize a lot with my clients. And that being said, a good reader has discernment of how to say things, when to say things, what to say. A big part of our job is not only getting accurate information, it's protecting the subconscious peace and health of our client. It's empowering them to connect with their highest timeline. And this is just a word of caution and advice, but also empowerment when it comes to getting readings. And trust me, there are amazing readers out there. So this is not to say like, always have your guard up and people aren't connected. I'm not saying that at all. There's amazing, amazing readers. But there are also readers out there who jump into the professional space maybe before they're fully developed or ready or things like that. And from that conscious awareness, a lot of their messages are actually not from spirit, not from your angels, not from your guides. A lot of their messages are misunderstandings and projections. And then you can take that and become superstitious. And I mean, I see people come into my readings and they have horror stories. Like this one lady was like, a psychic told me that I would be single and alone at 50. And it's like, first of all, who does that serve? Who does that serve, that message? That's certainly not how spirit speaks. That's not how angels speak. Who does that serve? It's not constructive and it's not based in love. So who does that serve? And so when you get a message from a reader in a reading that brings up a lot of fear and scarcity consciousness and superstition, I really urge you to not take that on because, like I was saying, this is the time period where people are getting more readings. And I want you to remember that when it's from spirit, actual your angels and guides and spirit, the message will make you feel lighter. The message will empower you. The message will give you constructive steps. It's not just predictive for the sake of being predictive. It's not disempowering and it's not going to create fear. Fear is the inverse frequency to your angels and guides. Your angels and guides advice is here to lift the weight off, not pile weights on. And I was in a situation where I got a message from somebody this is also why I don't really resonate with predictive work very much, because it's just like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? And it was basically just predicting something negative in my life. And it really bothered me. And I told the person right away, I said, I don't think this is constructive or helpful or a good way to sort of conduct this. And she understood and it was fine. And we had a conversation. But it just made me realize that if you're not a reader yourself, there's a lot more room for superstition to come in and fear to come in when you get a message that is fear based. And to explain it from a reader's point of view, sometimes we can feel things like, oh, I feel tension, I feel heaviness, I feel sadness. But then a reader who isn't fully developed will then interpret that feeling with their mind and give a message based on that interpretation instead of actually what your angels and guides are saying. So it's like, oh, I'm feeling some, for example, tension. I feel a tense relationship. But instead of saying, oh, that tense relationship is actually with your mom and they're bringing that up for healing, they're not getting that part. And they're like, I predict that you are going to break up with your boyfriend because I'm feeling a tense relationship. And that actually is not what spirit is saying. That's not the message. And so sometimes that can happen where it's a misinterpretation of what the message was supposed to be, or a misinterpretation of what they saw, heard, felt, or a projection. And so just again, run everything through. Is it lightening the load? Is it solution oriented? And is it based in love? Because that is the criteria for a true message from spirit. They're not going to rub your face in something that you know isn't going to work or isn't working already or is difficult already. There's no point in just bringing that up. What is the message? What's the solution? How are we moving the ball forward? How do we feel more powerful? A monarch butterfly just flew by me right as I said that. So yeah, let spirit leave you lighter. And if you weren't left lighter, that's not a message from spirit. That's just more human density, projection, and a need for that reader to maybe have a little bit more training so that they know how to either give the full message or trust what they fully get without letting their mind come in and interpreting it and saying things that could potentially be really harmful for your subconscious health. And with this message, I first of all don't want to say that any reader is 100% accurate all the time, including myself. Everybody can misinterpret things or get in their head or things like that. But with that being said, if you're holding yourself to a professional level, you can sort of recognize, okay, I can feel my mind coming in. I'm not 100% certain about this. And you'll communicate it in a way that empowers the client. So in no way with this message am I saying I'm perfect and look out for other readers. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is watch who you give your power to. It's important for a reader to protect your subconscious health. And it's not about even the messages being right or wrong. It's about the discernment of, is this coming from ego or service? And am I protecting the subconscious health of my sitter? So I just wanted to add that in as well. So as I was saying, as I was feeling into our angels and guides, I actually had an archangel presence come through, and that doesn't always happen to me. Sometimes it happens in readings, especially if people have religious backgrounds and they grew up with the archangels, they'll pop in. Archangel Michael is definitely a popular one. But when I was tuning in, I saw a ring of emerald green light. And Archangel Raphael came in, and I have like chills as I'm talking about this. And I basically was given this ring of emerald light as a visual to meditate with, to call in Archangel Raphael to meditate on this ring of healing green light. And green is associated with the heart chakra. And Archangel Raphael is the archangel of healing, mind, body, soul. And so I feel like this is a time where we might be able to use some healing, some grounding energy, some love, and some just soothing. And so automatically, when I saw this ring of emerald light, I felt calm. I felt grounded. I was able to release some of the tension that came up from the messages that I didn't resonate with today that I received. And it was just such a reset. And that's the feeling I get. It's like, whew, this ring of emerald light is here for just a nervous system reset, a healing energy, support. It's like take all of the anxious energy off of your heart and just throw it into that ring. Just throw it into that ring and give it to your angels and guides and let them handle it. And as I was getting that visual, I saw a pathway. And I've had this visual before of this pathway where there's only the part that we are currently on lit up. It's like, don't focus on the past. Don't look too far into the future because that's not in our control. This path, this part of the path that we're on is the point of life. Like where we are here and now is the point. The journey is the point. And it feels really important to just continue to trust your vision, your faith, your heart, and to do the best you can with exactly where you are on the part of your pathway. Not what you hope will happen, not an attachment to outcome, not a comparison to where other people are. How can you do the best with where you are just right now? Because that is the formula that when you continue to show up in the best possible way in the here and now, that creates the highest possible timeline on the macro scale. And I saw such a cool image, and it was the third eye symbol, but the pupil was a snake, like wrapping around. And it gave me this feeling that the third eye messages are so tied to our transformation. Snake is a very transformative animal guide. It's all about shedding outdated skins. It's all about healing the witch wound. It's all about connecting back to our most powerful self. It's all about boundaries and respect. And it's really a divine feminine energy and this evolution of consciousness. And so I feel like there are such deep third eye, and I don't even want to say visions, I want to say knowings. I feel like deep down, we really freaking know, and we have to trust that. And I always say, trust your knowing the first time. Don't wait for a million times that you have to be shown that you're true. Trust it the first time. And you have to be able to trust yourself first and foremost to trust your angels and your guides. As I always say, intuition is the sum of all the times we've trusted ourselves. So trust that knowing, and that snake kind of raveling around the third eye as the pupil, or is it the iris? The round part was such a cool image. I did have a past loved one in spirit come through. And before I say that, I just want to say I do feel collectively there's lots of crossroads, there's lots of changes, there's lots of up levels. And, the energy just, it has been a lot. It has been a lot. And so continue to visualize that ring of green light. And it's so interesting to me with the third eye, the snake, and the ring of emerald light. It's like that circle just keeps coming up, that circle, that cycle. And so I feel like there's something with that circle too. It's like we're doing that spiral dance. We're going around and around. We're going deeper. And sometimes life isn't linear. Sometimes it has to be cyclical and circular, and that's okay. And to trust the timing with that and to do the best that you can with exactly where you're at. So I want to give a little bit of a trigger warning before this past loved one message, because, this is sensitive stuff. And if you're in grief right now, or you have somebody in a hospice situation or somebody who is on life support, I just want to give a trigger warning for this. So I did have a male past loved one in spirit. And immediately as he was starting to come through, my head started feeling heavy. My head started hurting. My neck started hurting. My body started feeling heavy. And I got this really interesting sensation of the physical body kind of being dead, for lack of a better word, and him being in his physical body, but not able to move his body. So I feel like this would be something like a coma or paralysis, something where he was like in a hospital bed and I feel like he needed life support. I feel like his body couldn't survive on its own. And I feel like his family struggled with pulling the plug. And I know that this is not an uncommon situation, that a lot of families have this situation. And I felt like this guy, when he was like here on earth, was light and happy and had so much love, and that his family adored him. But that as he was stuck in his physical body that was no longer working. It was just this feeling of like, I'm ready to get out. I'm ready to transition. And he was already halfway out the door. And I see him with his mom in spirit, who was there to help him transition to the other side. And so I also saw a connection to music with him, with drums, with music. I felt like there was a tie there with him. And I feel like he had, I wasn't quite sure on this, but for sure he had one son and one daughter, but I felt like there might have been a third child as well. And I saw just everyone in the family gathered around his bed and not knowing if they could hear him and having such a hard time and feeling guilty and not knowing what to do. And there's so much emotion around this as I talk about it. And there's so much love for him and from him to you. But the message that I got is that it's okay to pull the plug. And that is a message that I feel a lot of people need to hear. And it's truly all love. Once you're in a place in your physical body where you need life support to continue on, your past loved ones are already halfway out the door. And it truly is life in a sick body that is much more scary than rejoining the spirit world. And so there's something here about I was with you the whole time. I love you. I don't feel any type of resentment or anything about staying on life support longer than I should have. It's all love. But I want you to know that I'm okay and it's okay to let me go because you're not really letting me go. You're letting my physical body go. My spirit will always live on and I will continue to communicate with you in a new way, in a new language. And so I feel like he's really emphasizing his kids and his kids being his world and his wife being his world. And I just get the feeling here that his message overall is meant to be comforting, meant to say, like, truly, there's nothing to be afraid of with that release. It's okay. And that at that point, it's more about the family letting go than the person letting go because the person is already ready to transition and they already have so many people around them. And so that's kind of a simple message. I know it's a bit of a heavy one this week, but it also is good to know that as we're struggling with that decision and as that feels so heavy and difficult, that it's really the life density here on earth that is the quote unquote scary part, and a return home to spirit is the easy part. And it's really about our grief and how hard it is to let go. But that dad in spirit is good. He is with his people. And it's not like as they transition, it's like a scary thing. Like, did they make it or did they not? Like, they're always going to make it back to the spirit world. They go right back to spirit. And I feel like there's nothing dogmatic or scary about that. It's all love, it's all support. And every single person has somebody in spirit for them on the other side, even if they can't remember them in this lifetime. So that's the message there. I know it's a bit heavy. I feel like with Archangel Raphael coming through and that ring of emerald light, there is a big emphasis this week on healing, on release, on trusting your intuition, on healing mind, body, soul, and really just giving any anxiety or worry or fear or grief, give it to your angels for them to hold so that you can see a little more clearly. And that's the feeling I got when I visualized that ring of emerald light, was this feeling of a little bit of overwhelm, a little bit of overthinking, a little bit of heaviness, but then it brought me back to the still waters underneath that, sort of how the ocean, all the choppiness is on the surface. And when a big wave is coming, you just have to dive deep enough and the waters are still. And I feel like that's what that ring of emerald light is helping us do, to come to the still part of the waters where we can get more clarity. Because from the choppy waters, it's really hard to get messages. It's really hard to trust our intuition, and it's really hard to connect with our angels and guides. And that's where the mind wants to come in and interpret things and attach to things and tell stories about things. So come back down to the deeper waters. Your angels and guides are here to help you do that. This visualization technique is here to help you do that. And from that place, you'll have a lot more certainty and knowing of exactly what you need to do and how to move forward. And then just keep focusing on doing the best you can with your current circumstances. The rest of the answers will come. The rest of the answers to the book that you're writing will come. But right now, you're fully exploring this chapter, and just enjoy exactly where you are here and now, because every chapter has its own gifts. So, those are the messages for this week. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week, my loves. And just know how loved you are, and just know how much support you have from your angels and guides. They are always, always, always with you. So, much, much love, and see you next week.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.